Hello, folks. It's a good afternoon from Australia, and it's a good morning to the ladies in the UK who are going to be on our show tonight. And I'm passing you back straight away to Andrena.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Good morning, everybody, or good day, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Dreaming the New Dream. So today is the 23rd of January, so we're swiftly moving through the month, and it's my great pleasure to have Joy Wisdom on the show today. So welcome, Joy, and thank you for being our guest this week.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank Jag for connecting us, first of all, because he gave me your contact details. So through Jag, here we are talking today. So, right. So you're a teacher of over 20 years, clinical holistic practitioner, inspirational teacher, author, and you're founder of Allonus and Zest for Life and D.A.R.E, and oh my God, so much more. And I know you're also passionate about women's health and the lack of assistance they get in these ages. And yeah, totally with you on that. So let's start at the very beginning. Where did you start off in life, and what are the steps that have led you to do all these amazing things? Because I know you've sent me your leaflets there, and I was reading through them all, and I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know, are you asleep at night? And I'm also going to share that you've sent me 2 beautiful books, absolutely beautiful, and I love the pictures on the front. But there's so much in there. I was thinking, oh my gosh, and not disrespectful, because like some just a few pages, and you skim through these books, and I thought, gosh, this is gonna take some reading. So anyway, on that note, thank you for that, and yeah, let's start at the very beginning.
Well, I think what happened originally was with the holistic therapies and so on, that happened in the mid-1990s. And that was due to my husband having an accident. And he had a bad car crash on the M1 and hurt his back and so on. And I used to rub his feet, and he used to get a lot of assistance from that. He would feel some relief. And so I decided, well, I'll start learning reflexology. And I went to night school for that. And then it wasn't enough. So then I decided to do an ITEC professional training. And it all went from there, basically, because reflexology opened up a new world for me. It actually helped me to see that I wasn't a weirdo. There were other people like me, who didn't follow like sheep. And before that, I'd been, I brought up my children. I was in my 40s. I had a full-time job. So doing this training was quite challenging in your 40s, going back to school, as it were. And I still needed to do my full-time job. So I did that, and I passed. I think we had one of the hardest exams, because the ITEC exams were a bit like A-level. The pass was 75% of anatomy and physiology, and there was a lot of brain, all about the brain in it, and so on. So anyway, I had the bug, if you like, and I wasn't happy with just that, because I started to think about why why did people have what they did, why they didn't get better, so on and so forth. So I did a lot of training with reflexology and went into advanced levels and so on and so forth. And then I moved into diet nutrition, trained in that, and stress was a big thing. So I did stress management, and then I was still not happy with what I had, and I moved into craniosacral therapy. And during this time, I was introduced, a friend of mine said, come along and to this healing group that I go to. And we were doing spiritual healing. And she said, I knew you would be able to do it. And it came quite naturally to me. And then that grew to a new healing modality that came from Australia called magnified healing. And that was where I connected to Kuan Yin. And I started channeling Kuan Yin. So quite a journey of awakening for me. And certainly I realized, looking back on it now, I needed to be awakened, switched on, if you like. I felt as though I was switched on. We have these times, and through my experience now, through these times, we do have that point of where, right, you need to do what you need to do now. And certainly when my husband had his accident, he ended up having a big back operation and so on, spine fusion. And it got to the point where I couldn't look after him. We've got a small holding, do that and work full time. And so I reduced my hours, and I certainly had the feeling it was my time now. I'd been there for the children, for him, all of this. Now I needed to do what I needed to do. And I remember my daughter saying to me, but Mum, you can't do this. You've got to have a full-time job and all of this. And and my son said, Mum, do what you need to do. And yes, you cut your cloth accordingly, don't you? Yes, we went from 2 full salaries down to half of one, which was quite a big jump. But I thought, well, I'll start off doing reflexology. I'll do visiting people, and that's what I did. And I had then set up my own practice and so on. And because of my training, because I did so much, I went into lymph drainage, and then I followed the craniosacral route, which was very much around birthing, the impacts of that birth from the womb, and the impacts that we carry, that I realized in my craniosacral training. It wasn't necessarily that they were pointing that out to me. And they were very much, they didn't want anything to do with energetics or healing, or you just worked with the bones and the fascia and all of that sort of thing. But of course, we are more than that, and that the emotions affect the internal and so on and so forth. So I did a long training with craniosacral therapy, and what I wanted to do was a somato-emotional release, which they had trialed on soldiers, and found that the trauma, the complex trauma, was a lot deeper, and counseling wasn't enough. And that was what attracted me to it in the first place. But of course, I had to go do all the foundation before I could get to that. So yes, I traveled to America to see Dr. Upledger, who was the founder of the Craniosacral Society. I attended symposiums there with him and so on. I traveled to Ireland. I was all over the place in the training. And one of the things that interested me was that when we were in our training situations, we could have people that would go into a past life, and we weren't allowed to deal with it. And there were, it's get him down off the table, because one of the practitioners, and I trained with him in quite a few situations, we would get to certain methods, and then he would be up on the bed, arms crossed and dictating this, that, and the other. And I was trying to talk him down and so on. And the teacher came along and said, just get him back on the bed. And I said, but we have to deal with this. This is obviously something that's coming up for him that needs to be dealt with. No, get him back on the bed. And in my own practice, working with people, they could go into past lives. And the emotion that came with that was huge. And I thought, I've just got to deal with this, because it's something that they need to have rectified, and a conclusion for them. And so I went, I started a trial of my own, if you like, an investigation in 2000, because I had this huge toolbox of wonderful methods and best of the time, but I still wasn't satisfied. I wasn't getting to the core here. And craniosacral therapy would work for a while, and then the person would come back, well, I've still got this pain. It's come back again. Why is it coming back? So I did a lot of investigation and started a quest of my own as to why people, some get better, some don't, but they may have the same diagnosis. And I realized it was emotions. So I did a lot of delving around the emotions and what we could do to help that. And my husband had a nervous breakdown, and the treatment that he was given was appalling as far as I'm concerned. It was take a tablet, and the tablet was having side effects. It was making him suicidal. And we went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, you know, there is no proof that this is happening, but he's the proof. You know, and it was just, we'll just keep taking the tablets. And then I helped him to reduce and to get off the tablets. He went through cold turkey, all of this. It was horrendous to live with. And you lose that person that you know. You lose that connection. You know, we've been married a long time. We've been married now 55 years. So I didn't want to lose my husband, and well, I've got to do something to sort this out and help him. So I did, and got him out the other side. Sometimes you don't get them all the way back. You can get 90% back, and then it improves, and has improved since that time. But then, of course, there were the headlines in between that period of this medication that he was taking. So many suicides have happened. Well, what a surprise, you know. And you've got to look at these underlying fears that people live. And I realized actually they weren't from today. They were from way back when. And I did a lot of investigations into that. And because of my craniosacral therapy connection, I was working with women with pregnancy. I specialized in women and children's health. And I would work with some women who were completely disconnected to their infant, and the baby could feel that. It knew, and I could communicate with the baby and help with that connection of the mother and the baby, so that they could start to bond again, because bonding is during that 9 months as well as when baby was born. So lots and lots of things around that period. And then I started channeling Kuan Yin, and there was nobody more surprised than me to be able to chat. And I did trance channeling with her, not having done anything like that before. And a friend of mine, we would get together, and she would scribe what the messages were and so on. And a lot of it was for me. A lot of it was about my journey, what I was here for, and so on, and helping to helping the planet and all of that sort of thing. And she gave me a new healing in 2007. And I was in Ireland at the time teaching magnified healing. And she said to me, "You're not going to teach this anymore because I'm giving you a new healing." And she showed me that people were having these connections, and it was the ground was barren, dusty, no seeds could grow, and we needed to change that. So she gave me, when I say she gave me the feeling of the energy, and I had half a page of notes that she gave me. Now go and teach it. And I thought, well, how am I going to do that? You know, go and teach it. And I said to her, I can't teach this because it's too high an energy. We need something that's going to be a stepping stone for this. I will blow people apart if I give them this. And this is the thing, that there is a misconception up there of what we can receive, because we can have huge emotional issues that block us from receiving. We close our heart chakra down, and then we live from very small amounts of receiving love and nurturing. And our understanding of love and nurturing is more from the head than the heart. And so the following year, I was in Scotland, and she gave me the first stage, and I gave her a huge list of what we needed incorporated into that healing. And it was that we needed something to help us with our emotions. We needed something to stop us picking up all this negativity that then puts us into a spiral, and so on and so forth. And she came back, and I was astounded with the combination here. And I launched it in 2010 because we weren't ready consciously to receive this new healing. And it helped me to put stage 1 and 2 together. So from 2008, I then started to work on putting this together, doing the meditations, creating the manual, and so on and so on. So huge amounts of living very fast life, if you like, and being in, getting this up and running. And the thing is that the areas of healing as we have known it has been surpassed by a millionfold with this healing modality, which is called the power of 3. And the first stage is Diamond Inga's Light Healing, which was what Kuan Yin gave me in 2008. And it was that I was going to help to bring this, but also the ethos of the divine feminine, which is supporting humanity, supporting women and children, and so on. And that has been my focus, of bringing in new ways to be able to help women and children, because a lot of it comes from how we are born, how we're nurtured, and the events that come from that those early stages. And I still advocate we need to go back there. That's where the answers are. So huge. And then Kuan Yin told me, you need to start training people in what you do. And I worked very intuitively. I worked with different elements of, we need to look at the energy, we need to look at the whole person to find out what's going on. And so in 2008, I was actually, 2007, I was actually in Egypt, and I had been going backwards and forwards to Egypt from late 1990s, and I was drawn to Egypt, and my husband took me on our 25th wedding anniversary. He took me on a trip to Egypt, and as I climbed down the steps, which is what we used to do in those days, climb down steps onto the concourse, tears streamed down my face, and I had this voice in my head saying, "You said you'd come back." And I loved it. We did the Nile cruise. We were at a hotel overlooked the Valley of the Kings, and so on. And it was very, very profound. I had lots of flashbacks. I loved Luxor. You know, that was my home. Not so keen on Cairo. Very male-dominated, male energy. It's very bullish energy to me. Whereas Luxor is a more feminine energy. And I did go, I think I've been to Egypt now about 18, 19 times. And I've been in groups, I've been on my own, I've taken groups, and done a lot of work there. And the feminine, you know, the chemical spices and so on and so forth, especially in Aswan, has a completely different energy and is very sacred. And anybody that goes there, it works with your sacred heart, which is the second heart chakra that we have. And I had some very spiritual, profound times with groups, etc. But I also found that people had a lot of emotional issues when they went to these places. And there was nothing to help. And so I was asked if I could help different people on these trips, and I'm using my abilities and helping to clear those past lives that were influencing them now. And it was really interesting to observe, and it taught me a lot of what not to do when I took people, when I trained people, because people thought they were going on a holiday, but actually it was a much bigger program than that. And,
tell me about it.
And people didn't realize that all of this stuff would come up, because we still hold it. We bring it back with us. And certainly, you know, the first book I wrote about Shell of Soul is that's what we become. From my perspective, we become so disconnected to who we really are. We live this shell of soul, and it's getting back to where and what and who we are, and soul being able to work with us in a very, very different way. And from that time of Kuan Yin giving me that energy and asking me to teach it, the whole program just exploded, because I launched stage 1 and 2 in 2010, and then I also, when I was in Egypt, I was approached by Hilarion, Ascended Master Hilarion, and he wanted to channel with me. And he's not known to channel with women. He normally channels with men, and he's very much around the IT, the support, and he too is very much about mind and emotion. And so we started to work together, and he told me an awful lot about my Atlantean connections and my Atlantean lives, and reminded me of an awful lot of those things, and that we had left an awful lot of information for the right times, the right consciousness, and how we've kept coming back to be able to, at the right time, be able to share that knowledge and guidance, etc. So he then explained to me, and this was early on, that I would be working with people that had been Atlanteans, and but it was a long time coming, and I had all this information and things I needed to do, but I had to wait and wait and wait until the time was right and the consciousness was right before I could start teaching. And that was called the Atlantean template, where we could reconnect to our Atlantean selves and start to bring more of that wisdom, knowledge, and knowing that had lain dormant. And because of what happened in Atlantis, a lot of people have closed their hearts, the shock, the trauma that we can still be carrying from those times. And we do find it in workshops. So in a nutshell, huge amount of, on so many different lines. When I was putting together the manuals for the first 2 stages of Power of 3, Diamondingers and Opalescence, I was also writing my first book, which was Pregnancy and Birth, A New Generation, which was all about, and it's a very big book. I can show
bigger than these.
It's a very big book, but it is for practitioners, new parents, all of that, and it takes you from the reasons around infertility right through to women's health and coming home from birthing, and also going into children's allergies and ADHD, because from my experience, ADHD is very much involved in birth trauma and continues then to along the line. And from my standpoint, we can actually make huge changes from that, and helping people if we recognize birth trauma, which it isn't, and it still goes on and happens every day around the world. And the levels of trauma that is created for mother and baby has huge effects, not only on the mother with postnatal depression and so on. That means that they don't bond, but it's also reducing the cognitive development of the infant because the mother has depression. And this has now been trialed and advocated. But there's very little action that goes on it. We're very good at finding these things, but we don't follow it through.
Interesting, eh? I just wonder how you sleep at night. With your books and like that, they're so full of content, and you've got all these different platforms that you're working. It just amazes me what you're doing. Absolutely phenomenal.
Well, it's very much when I was writing the books in those years from 2008 until 2010. I missed weddings, I missed functions and all that. I wasn't very popular, but I would be getting up 6 o'clock in the morning and writing, and then having my day back-to-back sessions with people, and then I would do a few hours in the evening, not get into bed till midnight. I couldn't do that now, and I don't know how I did it, but I did. And obviously you have the support to do that. And she is, Kuan Yin is very, very nurturing and very passionate about women's health. And one of the things that she gives in Power of 3 is that she gives a spark of the yin energy, and the yin energy is the spark of the divine feminine, and we hold that in us, and that gives us the connection to Kuan Yin, of course, but also to the divine feminine. And actually we live more compassion with that, and that's what makes the Power of 3 very, very different to other modalities.
So have you found anybody, like, is this like the great pond where different people all pick up the same sort of energies or healing, and they're bringing it about into their being as well? Have you found anybody else doing very similar to your work, or do you feel this is you pioneering this through?
Yes, it's more a pioneering work, and people can do little bits of it, but what I've tried to do is put it together. So it's squaring the circle, if you like. And lots of people, when I used to give talks and things, would say to me, well, I would like something that would tell me A to Z, which is what I've tried to do with Shell of Soul. But also bringing in the aspect from the practitioner point of view, and bringing, what I try to show people is the anatomy that is being affected by X, Y, and Z. And so we feel it on a physical level, and some of that physical level could be from huge devastation that we've experienced in other lives. We have irrational fears, we have rational thoughts, and so on, why we are guided to some people, drawn to some people, and avoid others, because we don't want to go there,
No.
But it's all about those memories, and those memories are everywhere. They're not just in the mind, they are in the cells. The DNA carries it, and your energetics carry it as well, and we bring it back with us.
And it's funny because I've got a friend that her daughter got married without telling her, and she was really upset about it. And it took me back to when I got married, which I don't need to go into, but for different reasons. And I could feel the emotion coming up. And gosh, that was in 1972. And I was thinking, flip, where did that come from? But all of a sudden I could really feel what was going on at the time and how it had affected me, let alone those around me.
And that's the thing. It comes from nowhere. It does come from nowhere, and people are surprised, and it means we haven't dealt with it. And I see people all the time and say, but I've dealt with this. Well, you've dealt with it with the mind. You haven't dealt with it from a body situation, and these impacts go everywhere. And of course, they bring down different levels of support in the physical body. And we can have huge emotional pain that is not recognized. And, these are some of the things I teach in my practitioners with the D.A.R.E, dissolve and resolve emotions, which is what I was asked to formulate and teach my method of working with people, basically. And from my perspective, we don't go far enough, we don't go deep enough, and talking about emotions just creates more internal stress, because you have huge amounts of stress hormones, but also cortisol that will be released while we're talking about it, because we're in the emotion of it. People have said, I have to psych myself up to go and speak about it. I feel worse when I've gone to these groups, because obviously you are absorbing from everybody else that's with you, and then that embellishes what you've got. So from my standpoint, we talk about things too much. We don't do enough action.
And like you say, like this morning, I mean, this was 50 years ago, and it just came out of the blue, and obviously I felt it, and it's like, and I thought, gosh, I got to compose myself, the show's got to go on. So which I did, but I thought, well, I obviously need to go back and address what had come up this morning. But you could be doing anything, you could be anywhere, and wherever that trigger comes in, or from a sound, or from music, or from somebody else, it just comes up like that out of nowhere. It's incredible, really, how fast these things come up.
It is, and it shows you how much we store, how much we're still underlying in our lives. And of course, that affects other relationships and so on. We might not be aware of it, but it will impact.
And I've had a feeling that you said when we spoke before about you had the ability to see people's aura and you could see their holes and knives and all sorts of things. Would you like to share a little bit about what your awareness in what you see in people? Because obviously, you know, we all, some see different things and some don't. So
yes, well, I was blessed with the with the ability of seeing the real situation of these past life influences have put on people. I am a psychic. You know, in other lives, I've been an oracle and all of these things. So obviously, the more we have worked with that and developed our psychic abilities, when we come back, we come back with them and they are there. But of course, we're not encouraged to use them. And I remember when I was a child, I would know what somebody was going to say before they said it. But you're not encouraged. You think everybody else is the same. They're not, and so on. So you eventually close these things down. But what happens is that we can be carrying all these wounds. These wounds can still be there underlying in the physical body. So my third eye, as it opened up again in late 1990s, was where I could see people as if walking down the high street, I could see people as if they'd all just come off a battlefield. And they could have wounds, open wounds, they could be bleeding, they could have an arm off, injuries all over them, knives in their back, and so on and so forth. And it made me realize what we are carrying, and we haven't ever dealt with any of that at this level. And of course, we can't see it in normal ways. It won't show up on an X-ray, but it can be the cause of many issues. And you know, very much we find these things all of the time, and that are influencing the disorders that we have today. For instance, there was one of my practitioners. She was working with a lady that they'd been told she needed a new hip, and so she had some D.A.R.E therapy. And working with her, she had injuries around her hip. We worked with that, and I think she had 4 sessions. And she went back to the hospital. They did another X-ray, and they said, "Oh, something is. It's not the same. You don't need a hip operation." So, you know, these are the things that can happen, and the recovery, the underlying issues, we're not looking at those, and we do not associate past life influences with health or mental health. And of course, the two are combined. And what we've been before, we bring memories of that back. It will undermine our living, etc.
Where was I going to go with this? Just give me a second. I had a thought and it's popped out. Oh yeah. Because like we've all had past lives. I don't know how many past lives. It could be just a few. It could be hundreds. It could be even more. I mean, how does, you know, if you've got so much past life stuff to deal with, how do you deal with it all in this lifetime? Because we're going back aeons, and also our ancestral, you know, we're carrying ancestral wounds and programming, aren't we? We're like all my family and relations that are gone and beyond. I'm the one carrying different things through now in this reality.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that I teach is about transgenerational transference. And it has a lot to do with our thinking, what we will accept, whether we have tolerance, intolerance, all of those things. And it is compounded by different themes. And certainly we are the generation of where we are being encouraged to deal with us and encouraged in a spiritual way to align the four cells, which is the physical, etheric, emotional, and mental bodies, and get that back to a unit, a working unit, because our aura does reflect some of that past life influence, transgenerational, cultural lineage that will be influencing us, and we are conditioned by it when we are, from the womb. It's whatever is dominant in the DNA of the parents or the grandparents or great grandparents that comes through the DNA, and in formation we are then formed from that, whatever that dominance is. And again, what weakness there is as well on the physical. So this generation is very much, we need to sort this out. We need to be aware of it. We need to deal with us. The more we deal with us, the more consciousness you can receive, the better health you have, and the longevity you receive from it, because you're getting these negativities or weaknesses that we have inherited or brought with us, that is then going to affect our heart rhythm, our immune system, even down to your bone strength and calcium that you will produce, will all be in that pack. It's working and being more active and direct in removing this, that helps us then to get back to us and who we are, rather than living all the overcoats of our lineage, etc.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned that most of us are not living to our full potential. We're only doing a fraction, even though we might think differently. Because of what we're carrying.
Yeah,
we're only being a percentage of who we really are, or who we've come to be in this lifetime.
Definitely. And we're so used to it. It's not even on our radar to pick it up. We are so used to it. The interactions that we can have with others. There was a grandmother that came to see me a couple of years ago, and her stories in the Shell of Soul book about grief and how we carry this grief. And she had waved her grandson off in the morning. He'd had a car accident during the day, and she just couldn't recover from this. And at 15, 20 years later, she was still grieving. The parents had moved on, the siblings had moved on. Nobody knew what to say to her. And her daughter contacted me and asked me if I could help her. So she came along. She was very tearful. She said she didn't sleep. She just existed. She said her marriage wasn't the same, and so on and so forth, although her husband was still with her. And so I got her on the couch and started to work with her. She immediately went to sleep. And what I found was that her grandson in another life had been the love of her life. And it went back to Egypt times and so on. And where she had been married, but she had him as her love of her life. And it was found out, and he was taken away, and she didn't see him again. But it broke her heart, and she didn't recover from that. And what I'm explaining in the book is that we can have different degrees of grief. We can have different degrees of devastation. Her devastation was huge. And we don't go in degrees of our grief. We just plummet to the level that the extreme level that we've lived before. And that's what she lived. And after her session, she said, I feel as though a big weight has been taken off my chest. And all the time I was working with her grandson, her lover, stood at the bottom of the bed. he couldn't move on because of her distress.
Yeah.
And they'd come back together to try and bring completion or resolution. But what happened was she had gone into that huge grief and shock that she lived with. And she came back a week later and said, I have a message from my husband to say thank you. I've got my wife back. And I wish we'd found you 20 years ago.
I bet. Beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah. And there's things like that is touching the soul, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Making such a difference. You know, and when you talk about Egypt, it's like I shared with you, I only came back from Egypt halfway through in October. And I knew it wasn't going to be a holiday as such. And I knew it was going to be a spiritual adventure, but I had no idea to what degree that I'd be so ill over there and seeing doctors in hospital and, you know, and so I had double pneumonia, which I've cleared quite a lot, but I know there's still a little bit left to be dealt with. But, and pneumonia is all about the lungs, it's grief on the lungs. So I'm thinking, geez, you know, where does all this come from?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's obviously past lives in Egypt that I had no idea that ongoing that those things would trigger up for me like it did mega. You know, I had no idea. But it just wasn't in my awareness at the time.
It's very sobering and awful experience to have to go through. And one of those things can be classed as a soul retrieval, but it is also where whatever you lost, you are picking up when you go back to those places. For me, when I went to Australia, it was a soul retrieval. I visited Uluru, and I was absolutely gobsmacked by going to that place again. And the following day, we went to the Olgas. I didn't know the Olgas existed.
Right.
Not on my radar at all. And when we were flying in to that part of Australia, I had a vision of an old Aborigine. My heart was pounding. I felt as though I was having a heart attack as we were coming into land, and then it disappeared, and I thought, oh, you know, that was very strange. It must be some sort of past life influence, and didn't think any more of it. Now, as we pulled up at the Olgas, everybody rushed off the bus. I couldn't even get up. My heart was pounding. I was I could hardly breathe. Anyway, I was last off the bus, and my husband was off with his camera and so on. And I got off the bus, and I could hardly put one foot in front of another. And of course, the Olgas was a very sacred place where people went to die. Essentially, they knew it was their time, and that's what they would do. And I managed to get so far, laboring every footstep, and I got to a certain point where there was a bridge, small bridge with would have been a river bed underneath it. I got there and it suddenly disappeared, and that was my soul retrieval. I had gone there to die as an old Aborigine. Having said that, I see awful lot of people that go on holiday and come back with more than when they went with, which is the reaction similar to what you had, where whatever that devastation was or illness was, we have a reoccurrence of it. And that happened to me when I went to Pompeii. Wonderful time wandering around Pompeii. Fantastic. you know, I love the history, all of that. And then the last place we went to was a holding place where they had the plaster casts of where people had died in the ash and so on. And there were all sorts in there. There was a donkey, there was a carriage, and all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And there was a lady who was heavily pregnant. And when I saw that, I started to cough and cough and cough, and I couldn't stop coughing. And it was the last place we visited, so we were headed our way. And I kept coughing, I couldn't stop. I had a drink, and I started to feel really unwell. And what we had was these, the realizing that that ash gets into your system and into your lungs. And I got back to the ship, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, what the heck is this? And then suddenly realized I'm being able to use my methods. I was able then to clear it out. But, you know, we do come back with this stuff. And they are those memories, they are those triggers that will, when we put our foot on that ground, there it is. You know?
I know, because I was fine before, you know, before I left. Like, mind you, the day before I did start to have a little cough, and anyway, but you know, and I'm climbing up the King's Chamber and here, there, and everywhere, and all this, you know, and this has started happening, and cough. I could not stop coughing for, oh God, 20 minutes or so. Thought I was dying.
You would.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, you just don't know, do you, where you are in life, where you're going, who you're going to bump into, and what the next trigger is to deal with. So it's obviously people like yourself. Go on.
One of the things I find is that karma can be underlying with all of these things as well. And one of the things that I offer, which is recently, I've been putting together, I've been teaching about karma for a long time. And I offer a one day, there's a soul and soul psychology day, and then an introduction to karma that I run. But I also do an 8-week evening, because everything's digital now, and finding what that karma is, what karma means, and how we can stop doing it, but also the historical side of it, helping to clear the backlog for people, and the ancestral lines, which is the culture and lineage, because we can carry their karma too. You know, it's passed down the line. And so, best will in the world, it's not ours, it's theirs. But
I know.
So by dealing with that, and there has been tremendous changes for people. You know, they've had new opportunities, abundance has come in, all sorts of different things have happened by doing that week and clearing out the influences that can be disease and all sorts of other stuff that's in there.
But it's amazing, isn't it?
There's lots of spokes to the wheel, unfortunately.
Isn't there, Jess? And it's like, you know, I say, right, well, we're dealing with our staff, we're dealing with ancestors and Uncle Tom Cobley and all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And why, you know, we see it in the world, we're just repeating things. And there's a huge global karmic debts being cleared or being created as we look around the world, and we still have people who are still in their fight. For instance, there is a train of thought that Putin and the Ukrainian president, I can't think of his name, his name's gone, anyway, that they have been warlords before, and they have fought before. There are wins on both sides, but you know, this is karmic debt. Unfortunately, the people are the fodder. for these people's continued roles that they play and playing out.
Yeah.
And we live the consequences of that, of course.
And that's right. And if, you know, like people like yourself, there's not enough people doing this work at the moment, is there?
No, there isn't. And, you know, we do run practitioner courses, personal growth, perfectionism is another one. You know, I do an awful lot with mind and emotion, but the underlying levels of those beliefs, conditions, and so on, and these things that we take on board really from others around us, that again, perfectionism very much comes from the head. It is, from my point of view, a mental health issues, and it can create OCD, creates a lot of unhappiness, dissatisfaction, etc. And it can cause an awful lot of discordancy in workplace and within relationships. So it has a lot of negatives to it, and it's where we are trying to reach these goals of the mind that we cannot obtain, and nothing is perfect because we're human, we're learning, we're changing, you know. And again, I do a 10-week evening course on that, but there's no accounting for how the mind works, and it's different for everybody because of what they've experienced and the emotions that come with that.
And the more older you got, the more you've been carrying.
Well, yes, but the aim is to reduce it rather than accumulate.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, like stop. This is it now. Here endeth this, all of this, what have you.
Well, we're trying our best with the Power of Three, because incorporated with that is that we help to support all the students have a routine where they support Gaia, but we also work with clearing in D.A.R.E 7 generations ahead, because it can come back in. Yeah. So in the D.A.R.E therapy, we clear 7 generations ahead, and this is where it's trying to take it out of the DNA, stopping it from being passed down, because it can jump generations. And certainly in the book Mirror Image is where I talk about the quantum field, how we can store that in our quantum field, and so on. So it's not only working with the individual, their ancestors, their past lives, we also work with clearing the quantum field, which means that you can live without this stuff. Because if you're not taking all of it out, then you've still got it. It's still going to come in your quantum field, which is what I realize with cancer. We can have all the operations and everything, but the cause of it hasn't been dealt with. Yeah. And further down the line, 2-3 years later, well, it's secondary. Well, actually, no, it hasn't been cleared properly. Yeah. It's still there for you to walk into. And we can carry an awful lot of stuff in our quantum field from whatever we have created, and we're creating every day. So it's learning to create differently. And there's a lot of personal growth, conscious communication, removing karma, learning about energetics, all these things that we can do for us and stop recreating. That is going to make our world better and future generations better too.
And are you finding now, because there's more people, I don't like to use the word awake, but more aware now than ever before. Like there's such a huge change in consciousness that more and more people are having an awareness of different things and questioning different things, or wondering why things are happening, whereas before they were completely not aware, if you like. Have you noticed that there's a big difference now more than ever?
Definitely. It's very much down to the consciousness, and with all the new energies coming in, it's pushing consciousness up, and as the consciousness goes up, we become more aware, and we are also then not accepting. It comes down to what we accept. if we start questioning, we are not accepting, we are making change. And this is the whole point of evolution, is that we make change for the next generation.
Exactly.
Fortunately, we have come an awful long way in 50, 60 years. And certainly you and I came in to make that change in the 50s, in the late 40s and so on. And we were the elder indigos to come in to do that. And there were sprinkles of crystals and so on. But going forward, we had our children in the 70s that were the second wave of indigos that came in with very different makeup and very different mental attributes to make change for the world. And they're the people now in the hospitals, in government and all of that sort of thing, bringing in new age things, the IT that we now live with, and speeding everything up in our lives, networking that we didn't do before. The communication has changed enormously, and all of those things are taken on board very easily. But if you start to talk about consciousness, well, don't go there. But these people are hugely sensitive, and they have very delicate sensory perceptions, and whether they understand it or not, they can be affected by negativity around them. And they're the people that want to work from home. They're the people who I don't want to go there, I don't want to do this. And having the outlook, and having spoken to some mums of children, these children coming in with higher awareness, etc., they see us as being dinosaurs to what they can see and what they can do, and they really do. Get this, you want me to go in school there? They come from a very different perspective. They are very clever, and they can bring a lot to the world, but they do get bogged down by emotions and mental health that affects them drastically. And having worked with babies, with all the different types of energies they've come in and so on, it's and working with adults, it can be a cocktail of anything, but essentially they are then not able to work at the full potential because of what has happened to them. And they may come in without karma, and we've had huge swathes come in without karma, but it doesn't mean to say we don't teach it to them. So we need to clean up our act, and this is what the Power of Three does. It gives you lots and lots of options of personal growth, but also having this very high energy that is going to support you on a daily basis. And it is for personal, it's for you, but there are other elements that are taught, so you can use techniques to help you in your career as a practitioner, as a professional, and so on and so forth. And it's, it starts off with 2-day training, and it changes your life. You are fed with love and nurturing, because this is what we're missing. And it's the key to everything, isn't it? That love, nurturing, and how we can then enjoy life in a very different way.
Right. So you're talking about the Power of Three, but I haven't seen anything written about the Power of Three, like, in your list or... So is this something on your website? Is this something new?
Absolutely, yes. If you have the slides, it's on slide 3 and 4, and that's it. Thank you. And that's where there are different stages of the Power of Three that comes in here. We have the Atlantean template, which these are the additional programs that we run. But Power of Three is very much about personal development and living with 3 heart chakras. And when you think about it, having 3 heart chakras, that's opening your sacred and cosmic heart, helps you to embody more love. to hold more love, more light, and so on and so forth. So it's a wonderful way of developing yourself. It works very fast, and you can go through the different stages. We suggest 3 months between each stage, and helping people then to get to those connecting back to the soul, working from your agenda, all of those things that helps. It also provides a buffer around you to knock out any negativity that's around you, because we can have it environmentally. And what it does, it transmutes it before it gets to you. So you're not picking up as much, and we are clearing, stopping some of the Groundhog Day living while you're using this. And it comes in different stages. You have the Diamondinga's Light Healing, which is the first stage, two days, and that's where we're running that 1st, 2nd of February. If anybody wants to do it, it's on online, so it's no traveling involved. And then the next stage is opalescence, which is 3 days. This is where you are then connected to your twin flame, and it's very, very profound for people. It is bringing that wholeness back to you, and we have been separated from the twin flame for a long time.
Yeah, because talking of diamond light, about 4 nights ago, I remember dreaming there was a blue background of paper, and there's all these light codes or all these different symbols on. And I've tried to recreate, but at the moment I haven't been able to do that. But yeah, and I was thinking, what's going on here then?
Well, the diamond light came in 2008. That's where the diamond light came in. And what we've done with the power of 3 is that we have connected it to the energies and qualities of the rune Ingus, which is working with changing the 4 bodies, bringing them more in line and helping them to align as a unit, so that we can receive as a unit rather than a fragmented unit.
And I did do a diamond light healing in Australia when I was over there. Obviously, which is yeah. So anyway, honestly, Joy, this has been absolutely amazing, and I know we've only touched on a fraction of the things that you do and that you'd like to share. So I would love you to come back again and another time to share more. Because obviously we didn't really talk about D.A.R.E. You've touched on some of the things, so it would be lovely for you to share more. Maybe we can ask people if they want to ask any questions. We could do some questions and answers.
Absolutely.
And I know you mentioned perhaps as well next time. You were said about offering a book, so we could do something that for people to get go into a draw or something to receive one of your books.
That would be lovely. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's been an absolute delight. So I don't know whether you've got anything to share, Jeffrey.
And I was very interested to find out what's your past life with your husband.
Oh, we've been together many times. Yeah, we've had lots of history of being together.
Yeah, for him to have the car accident and then to go through all that and then come out the other side and then go get Black Dog, and you to be there for him. It shows a bit more yin and yang in that respect, doesn't it?
It does. We know each other very well, inside out. And when I met him, I was 16 and I knew I was going to marry him. He didn't know that, but I did. And we were engaged. I think I was with him about a month. And the second week he was telling me, I'm not going to get married until I'm in my 40s and all of that. And then by the end of the month, he'd asked me to marry him. So, there we went. I was married at 19. So
Yeah, amazing how it all works out, eh?
isn't it? Just
So, and your daughter and your son, it sounds like your son's has been in the medical world of
No.
philosophy and no, in past lives, because he seems to be able to step back and say, "Mum,
He
whatever's
does.
going to be for you."
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
suggests to me that he's been a scholar of the past. And
He's an indigo, and indigos don't really suffer fools lightly, do they? And you have to earn their respect, and he is definitely one of those. He is in IT in this life, but yes, he has huge qualities, and he sees the bigger picture.
And
My
the
daughter's a crystal. So she is very different in her attitude. Crystals are hugely sensitive, and a lot of crystals have been affected by the lack of love in the world, and they can be working in 2000 we had 2012 we had a huge group of children that came in that are working with their sacred heart. So they've already got the second heart open, which is what we help with D.A.R.E, help you start opening the first stage. But they all
very good.
And they're working from the 12th solar chakra. Christ consciousness. It's not a religion, it is a vibration. And they work with that. They don't understand why people want to hurt one another. They don't understand why people want to be nasty. And they are hugely sensitive. And life has been tough for a lot of them, especially the first ones that came in. So very different characteristics, very different thinking, very different outlooks on life, etc. The package, the indigos came in with a package, especially at my age in the 50s. They came in with different attitudes, but also the energy to support us so that we could live in this negativity that we came into, because back in the 50s life was completely different from what it is today, and there was very little consideration for your feelings and how you felt, whether you had bonded or anything. That wasn't even thought about in those days. You did as you told, you didn't speak up, and it was had a lot of Victorian values, and we had to come in with something that would help us to get through that. So the elder and indigo energy is very different to the ones that came in the 70s. They can be more sensitive, but they do want to work as a team. They want to achieve. They want action rather than discussion, and you can make things move forward.
Maybe we can do this next time.
Yes, that would be great.
That would be
I would
interesting.
love to come back.
Yeah. So because there's, it's just so much more. But yeah, that would be lovely. Okay. Right then. Well, thank you, Joy. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And all what you're doing. So thank you for that. And thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And same time, same place next week.